Aquarian Pools and Spas. If you can dream it, they can build it. More than 50 years in business. Start your dream pool today. Aquarian Pools and Spas. 803-732-3636.
The one and only South Carolina head football coach Shane Beamer joining us this afternoon. How fun is that part of the job? Like, how fun is it? I'm sure it's neat at first, but now you're like, oh, media day? Oh, good. Here we go.
Well, it's fun being on with you guys, first of all. It's part of it. I enjoy it. You know, I can't lie. You're ready for games to start because there's only so much to talk about when you're not playing games. And, you know, the tough stretch is when we have the media day in Tampa, followed a few days later by the Birdies with Beamer media golf tournament where I talk again, followed by a few days later the press conference to open the season. So that's 3 in like a week and a half span or whatever it is. Yeah. Before you even practice. But it's part of it. You know, I love that there's this much attention. I love coaching at a place where there's so much attention on this program and that people care about, you know, what I say in regards to the football program. So love it and enjoy talking to the media and especially you.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, glad to have you on here. I know you were in the busy part of the season, really, with fall camp and trying to prep, so I appreciate you taking about 20 minutes out, 15, 20 minutes out. You said something, and you're right, and I appreciate you for all the availability that you've given. Obviously, the two media days, now 2 press conferences. I know the fans love it. We love it. But you did say something I thought was really fascinating that I have not thought of, and I think is my job sometimes. You got to discuss these things. You mentioned the difference in 24 to 25 in seniors, and I thought hadn't even thought about this with last year only having 4 starters that were seniors, and kind of talk to that and not having that experience. That end-of-game experience, I guess, that you had in 24 when there were a lot more senior late. You had 3 defensive linemen who were older players. Your linebackers were older players. Nick Eamon-Warry was an older player. They could finish out games. Compared to last year, maybe there were guys in crunch time kind of questioning themselves or just younger and that not knowing how to do it.
Yeah, certainly leadership is key. I mean, the leadership's key 12 months a year, 7 days a week. But leadership on a team, to me, really, really shows up when, you know, you're in the fourth quarter of games and it's the bullets are flying, so to speak. And you think back to the leadership that we had in 2024 in a lot of those close games that we had, you know, fourth quarter at Clemson, and you saw an older guy and, you know, Demetrius Knight and the play that he made and you know, Missouri that year with you know, Rocket Sanders on the game-winning touchdown run and things like that. But outside of just the individual guys, if there was leadership on that team where the young guys look around and say, okay, we're going to be all right, you know, that we're on the road, we're at home, it's a dogfight in the fourth quarter, but we got this. And not saying that we didn't have that last year, we just had less seniors than what we had the year before. And when you're in the situation we were in, and whether it be Columbia, Missouri in the fourth quarter where we're winning, or Texas A&M going into the fourth quarter where we're winning, or, you know, a one-score game with Clemson with, I think, 4 minutes left in the game or whatever it was last year, Alabama, you know, where we're got a 9-point win or 9-point lead in the fourth quarter. You need the leadership in those moments, certainly, and we had leadership. Nick Barrett, Luke Doty, I mean, those are 2 great leaders for us last year, but we just didn't have the same number of guys that we had. And ultimately, that's my job as the head coach. I mean, I'm the leader, so I've got to be better. I'm not saying that, but when you have more guys that have been through those battles, it certainly helps. We have that right now, and that's not to say that if you have a young team that you got no chance, because we've seen great examples of young players with a lot of freshmen and young teams. I mean, Lenore Sellers was a redshirt freshman in 24, and you saw what he did. So there's 2 different aspects of it, but I certainly think when you've got a lot of older guys like we do this year, not just on game days, but there's just an understanding and an expectation and a standard of how things are done day in, day out, and I'm seeing that currently happen.
You look at depth and experience against ultra-talented teams in this day of college football, I look at Indiana last year, and yeah, they had Mendoza, and yeah, they have Charlie Becker, who's back. But outside of that, it was a lot of experience. And then you look at teams who recruit really well, but they're young players. What is the formula? What would you rather have in college football these days? Because college football is not the same as it was 10 years ago. It's totally different than it was 20 years ago. Your thoughts on ultra talented but young versus ultra experienced but depth? What is the better combo? I know you'd love to have both, talented, but if you choose one, what are you going with?
Man, the experience and the depth. Just the length of the season is longer, the wear and tear. We're playing non-SEC games. When you've got more players that you could win with, that's a bonus. When you've got more experienced guys that just understand the rigors of this league, they understand how hard it is to win football games. When you got a bunch of, to me, I tell our players all the time, and I say this all the time, that you win with people. And when you've got just a bunch of really good people on your team, that guys with depth that you can win football games with, I just don't think you can have, enough of that. And I know you look at Indiana last season. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that they had the year they had, number one draft pick and their number one draft pick, really good coach. I understand all that, but they were an older team, and the average fan probably couldn't name any player on Indiana's team outside of Fernando Mendoza, and that's not to knock some of the other players they had, because I know, there's Becker, the receiver, and Surratt, and all these great players they had. I get all that, but the average fan, they knew Mendoza, and it was just a really good team of a bunch of older guys that were really good, solid football players, and you saw what happened.
Again, Coach Beamer joining us here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines on the Halftime Show. Speaking of experience, I believe this is something you mentioned back in the spring where maybe last year you assumed a lot of guys maybe knew some things they didn't, and you wanted to make sure you were more specific with maybe going back to the basics in a lot of ways for everybody, especially guys coming in that you aren't as familiar with compared to guys coming back. What's that looked like? And I know you have a guy in FG with it. You're quite literally teaching the game of football as he's learning. We'll put him to the side. But for the other guys coming in from the portal, the other guys coming in from high school, what's that process been like this offseason of making sure everybody understands football in the same way?
Yeah, we started it back in January of really just teaching the game. And, you think about it, so many of these guys nowadays, I mean, they grew up, they're playing the game on, like, the video games, but how much do they actually know the game of football and the rules and formations and things like that? So we spent a lot of time on that starting back in January, and then we always start with just the, technique, fundamentals, football 101, if you will. So we started that pretty early when they came back for the spring semester with the coaching staff. And then, to me, you're constantly educating. There's no question about it. And just assuming that it's, I think, a great model for us is you mentioned Neff. And Neff is a guy from Ireland that is playing football literally for the first time ever in his life, so we've got to be very basic about everything that we're teaching and really, just assume they don't know. And we've got to have that same mentality with every player on our team, whether you're, Peyton Williams and it's the fifth year in our program, or you're Neff and you've never played football before in your life. Every player, it's starting over, it's day one teaching, and they may have heard it before. They may have heard, whatever I said in the team meeting this morning at 7:30. It may have been the same thing that I said 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. But if they've heard it before, they're hearing it from a different perspective, if you will. Maybe you heard me give this message back in 2022. If you're Peyton Williams and you're a true freshman, it resonated one way with you. Well, now you're hearing it in 2026 as a redshirt senior starter, and you're hearing it from a different perspective on that one too. So, just trying to do a great job from that standpoint, and always being thorough in everything that we're doing.
Coach Shane Beamer joining us this afternoon. A few minutes left. Let's get the We want to be like everybody else, Coach. What's the injury status of Peake and Stewart? What's the injury?
Man.
No, I'm just
kidding. Another one.
I specifically said we were not going to ask that question, Bill.
I'm just cutting up with you because I feel bad for you every time you go to the podium. That's the second question, first question. We made it this
usually
far.
First.
Yeah,
David's going to get the first question. He's going to ask for an injury update, and then somebody else will sneak a health question in.
Don't worry about it.
It's good. It's the same thing it was on.
Yeah.
It's the same thing it was on Tuesday. Those guys were out at practice this morning, progressing nicely, and on track to have a really good 2026 for us.
Yeah, I'm joking with you. I like you said, there was an update 2 days ago. What's really changed in 2 days? I do want to ask you about your wide receiver room outside of Nick Harbor. You brought in a lot of guys 2 years ago, really talented, that last year maybe needed a little bit of maturing. Malik Clark, Jordan Gidron. Jaden Sellers really came on at the end of the year. Now you bring in another young man, Sequel Patterson, who's actually an early enrollee, should be a senior. How has he performed, Sequel? Because to me, just watching his highlight tape and seeing what you got, he's a little different guy. He seems a little different. Lex Cyrus is another one. These younger guys that maybe didn't see as much action last year, how have you watched them develop from the end of last season to now to compete for those starting spots?
Yeah, I really like that receiver room. I've said it in some of those media availabilities that we had a lot of depth. We had more depth last season than we ever have in my time here as the head coach, and I believe that. But we've got even more depth now because all those guys are a year older, and we've brought some guys in from the transfer portal or freshmen like Sequel that have come in here. And you mentioned Lex Cyrus. I feel like he's really flashed and done some good things through these first 5 practices that we've had. Really, really like what Sequel's doing. He didn't get to go through spring practice, so he didn't graduate early like the rest of the class. We didn't get here till summertime, but it's very evident in a short period of time in the 1 week that we've been practicing that he's got a twitch, he's got a burst, he's got an ability to make you miss, an explosiveness that is a skill set that we really, really like. So obviously his head is swimming right now. There's a lot coming at him from knowing what to do. But as he continues to learn what to do and gets more and more confident out there, he's gonna. I'm excited about his ability to help us as we go into the season.
And Sequel's one of many freshmen we've talked about a lot this offseason, Julian Walker, Noah Clark, Xavier Currents, that we're hoping all have an effect this upcoming year. But there is a difference between doing things in preseason camp or spring ball and doing things in actual games once we start playing here in a couple weeks. Are there things that you can see, though, in preseason camp that tell you, like, hey, that specifically is going to translate to a game? Now, again, different position groups maybe tell you different things, but can you tell right away in camp which guys are going to be able to actually make that impact in the games and which ones might still have a ways to go?
Yeah, I think so. One, I really like this freshman class overall, and they very much look the part. But I think it's just the ability to make plays in practice against, really good competition. And I'm seeing all of that, whether it be, Sequel Patterson and a play that he has made in practice, or whether it be, Darius Gray in a one-on-one pass rush setting against a really good defensive tackle or defensive end that he's able to win the rep, or Noah Clark from a physically dominant mindset of what he's able to do at the line of scrimmage at times, or Xavier Currents and some of the plays that he's made in practice, whether it be open field tackles or flying to the ball on defense, all that. I think certainly you just see the physical ability, if that makes sense, and you say, okay, it's different than a game setting, but what he just did right there is pretty dang impressive, and that's going to carry over whether it's on the practice field or on a game field on the road in front of 100,000 people. But name those guys specifically. But overall, with this freshman class, I'm really excited about the class and the initial start to the preseason that we've seen from those guys.
I know all attention is on Kent State, and then all attention will be on Towson and Mississippi State and so forth and so on. But being a guy who's coached here for a while, 6 years now, had a stint there, obviously, as assistant coach. For you, is it a little, I don't know, more fun is the right word, but a little more just feels right to look at that schedule? And I know they're good, but to see Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, the usual SEC rivals that you play, and nothing against Missouri's or A&M's or whomever else, but I think for a lot of fans who've grown up like me since '92, seeing the Georgia game, seeing the Tennessee game, which is a great rivalry. The Florida game, maybe not as much meaning, but Spurrier brought meaning to it. Even for a head coach like you who's a football fan, you see those games, you go, man, that's a little more South Carolina football to play those three teams.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love the opportunity, like you said, that we get to play, of everybody in this league. But, for so long there was the SEC East, and you knew you had Tennessee and Florida and Georgia every year, and it was weird not playing Georgia the last couple of years with as close as we are, and Augusta, separating us on the map, and it'll be neat to have those guys back on the schedule. And I think it's just great for the fans. I think just our fans and their fans, just from a travel standpoint, it is what it is. It's easier to get to Gainesville, Florida, or the people in Knoxville to get to Columbia, or the people in Athens to get to Columbia, and our fans the same thing going those places than it is some of the other places. And we've got some great road trips, and I know when we went out to Norman, Oklahoma a couple years ago, we had a ton of Gamecocks out there that loved that trip, so that's awesome. But I think certainly the schools that are within 2, 3, 4 hours of you, 5 hours like those schools are, it's great for the fans to be able to get to them, and it definitely seems like it's what it's supposed to be, seeing those guys on the schedule.
Coach Beamer joining us here in the AAA Heating Our Phone Lines. Speaking of the schedule, of course, we knew originally you were supposed to be playing Miami in week number 1. We understand the reasons why. That got changed, so now it's going to be Kent State. Had it still been Miami, you would have been talking about the team coming off of playing the national championship, likely ranked somewhere in the top 5 in the AP poll. As far as motivating your team goes, because that motivation writes itself of trying to knock off one of the powers of college football. How do you go about making sure everybody is equally as fired up and as focused for taking on a Kent State team that on paper everybody's going to say, Carolina should obliterate those guys?
I think it's the standard that we want to play with every time we take the field, regardless of who the opponent is. But I don't find it hard to motivate those guys for week 1, because our players and the players across the country, I think, are just so excited to finally go in a stadium and play football week 1, because we've had every school in America has had 1 month of practicing against each other and not getting to go play. So there's just such a high level of excitement when the first game comes around, regardless of the opponent. And you're right. I mean, we've opened up with Eastern Illinois, we've opened up with Georgia State, we've opened up with North Carolina, Old Dominion, Virginia Tech, and it is what it is. I mean, opening ball games against Old Dominion and Georgia State, we struggled in a lot of ways, so we've got to be better coming out of the gate this year. There's no question about it, but I think for our guys, it's just understanding we only get 12 of these. 12 that are guaranteed is all we got, and every time we take the field, understanding how, the gratitude we have to be able to go play and compete in Williams-Brice Stadium in front of the best fans in the world, but then also the standard that we want to play with, and we don't pick and choose the level that we play with based on the opponent. We need to be at our best every single week, and each and every week be better than we were the year before, and that's the mentality going into it.
I know coaches, these things get scheduled so far out in advance that I don't know what really your input is. Does Jeremiah Donati come to you at all? How does that work as a head coach? And do they say, hey, hypothetically, we got Georgia Tech here on the phone who's interested, or this way? How much say do you have personally in the schedule, or does Jeremiah hand you the schedule and go, hey, in 2030, here's what you got?
No, a lot to say. I mean, obviously, Jeremiah and Jeff Crane, sport administrator for football, or deputy AD, they do an awesome job, and ultimately they're in charge and they're my bosses. So if they say we're opening up with whoever or we're playing whoever in 2030, great, let's go. But there's nothing happening schedule-wise that they're not talking to me first and saying we have these opportunities, or, this team's a potential opponent in whatever year. Some of that was this this upcoming season, as you're referring to in regards to the Miami game, and then who got added, and some of that was in future years with teams that either went off the schedule or came on the schedule. So we're always having scheduling discussions. They loop me into it, but ultimately they're in charge.
No, we're not quite to game week yet. I don't think anybody's asked you this in the pressers, but what can you tell us about Kent State? How much have you dove into them, and what can we look forward to for that matchup in week 1?
Yeah, good timing. I was actually watching a little bit of them this morning for sure, this morning before we started meetings early. But, team that I can tell you you guys are going to love this from a special team standpoint. They got a dynamic punt returner, kick returner that we better be aware of, and that's real talk. He's one of the best in the country. So that's one thing that jumps out. But, respect for them. We know about the level of teams that are coming out of the Mid-American Conference over the years, and we know the excitement about getting down to Columbia and playing in this environment. So I like it, though. You guys are really getting into it. We're asking Kent State questions 3.5 weeks before the game. I love it.
We're ready for it. Thank you.
I can tell.
Yeah. Hey, I've been fired up.
Let the record show I asked the first Kent State question.
I'm not.
You did. You're a football guy.
That's right.
What I like.
We hear your press conferences, and I didn't want to ask you press conference questions in here. Like I said, I was joking about the injury report. We've stolen more time than I told you. I really appreciate it, Coach. I know you got a lot going on. You mentioned you're watching film. There's probably more afternoon meetings. Thank you so much this afternoon, and love hearing from you, and look forward to maybe talking to you again later on in the season during the bye week or something. But enjoy being back. Glad to have you back for year 6, and look forward to what you're going to do.
Well, fired up for year 6. Appreciate you guys having me on, and continued well wishes to you guys, and proud of you too for your battle and hearing you on the air too. It's always refreshing.
I appreciate that, Coach. I appreciate that a lot.
You got it, brother.
Take care.